Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Alchemy podcast. It is 1617 hours. On this particular umpteenth day in the year of our Lord 2023, month of April, the month of Aphrodite, just FYI, fun fact for you. So welcome back to the Alchemy podcast. Now, I do have, I don't know if he'll chime in or not, but I do have a special guest with me for this particular second half of the show. Anthony is here. He came by to, get his work done, and also I'm making him coffee in the kitchen, so you might hear some background noise. If we do, it'll be very light, I'm sure, and he might even chime in if he's feeling bold and confident enough, and he's always bold and confident, so compliments to you, Anthony. So I wanted to get some authority. See, there's the coffee machine. It beeps. I wanted to get some authority behind what I was asserting before, because I did go onto Facebook. I checked out David, and he responded to the commentary that I left, which was very much reflective of the commentary that I had presented in the first half of this show, of this episode. And so he said, and I will respond in kind, as one does, live on the air, that he said, all my complaints I can go tell to 500 years of Catholic art and tradition, to which I replied, which it flies in the face of. And it's not a crown. He said it was also a meter. I'm like, it's not a crown. Or he said it's a crown, not a meter. I said it's certainly a meter, not a crown, because it has crosses on it. Why would Christ's own crown have crosses with which to channel the Christ power and represent it? Because he is himself, without need of any representation, the Christ power. Again, Christ doesn't need to wear his own representation. He is his own representation. He is him. He is Christ. You don't need to represent Christ when Christ is standing right in front of you, right? Right? I'm not wrong. Now, David asserts that I obviously don't understand the concept of that all Christian art is filled with symbols of allegory and foreshadowing of the figures, life, and fate. However, there are also other conventions that are universal and standard in the Christian world and in Christian art, which is, by the way, the same. And it wasn't until about the midway through the 18th century that sort of tangentialized or deviated only slightly therefrom, that it's all pretty universal. But it's actually not, so sorry to burst anybody's bubble here, it's actually not Christian in its origination. I'm so sorry. Allow me to please pop a Johnny little bonnet on your ideas here, everybody, and run out of the, quoting Malcolm Tucker here from In the Loop, run out of the shitter with the lubricated horsecock with a tea cozy or something, whatever he said. I'm sorry. I know I just lost, all the fuddy-duddy stick in the muds who are listening to my show, but that's okay. They're fuddy-duddy stick in the muds. Everyone who wants to learn something, come over here. Kind of like, actually, you want to know what is rather, I would even say, a fantastical but wonderful depiction of Christian art in History of the World, Part 1, when Mel Brooks is there, and he's at the Last Supper, and he's the Jewish waiter, right? At the restaurant they're in. And they're, he said, this could be our last supper. And he said, yeah, but it's my first order. and he has this great thing. He's like, oh, Jesus. And Jesus says, yes. And it's a back and forth through it. Leonardo da Vinci shows up, of course, for reasons nobody understands, but he's there. And Jesus says, we ordered a group portrait. And so the room is rather small in this private dining room. And so Leonardo's like, no, it's no good. I can see only half of you here. You got to see all your backsides. Sorry, everyone who wants to be in the painting, get on this side of the table. It's kind of like that. That's actually a really wonderful depiction of Christian art. Anyway, back to the point here. So I have in front of me the authority that I'm going to add weight to this. It actually is going to also lend credence to my assertion just now that it is pre-Christian and in either concurrent Judaic or I don't think it would be pre-Judaic. I'm also not sure. Actually, let me not strike that, excuse me, wrong word to use. Belay that, because I don't know if Judaic art would even depict this in this. Because I'm not. I think that Judaic art might have certain special rules about how art can and in what circumstances it can be depicted at all. And so they may actually not have depictions of the divine in such ways, and certainly wouldn't have necessarily depictions of Christ, though I don't know. But that is a topic for another episode, if ever. Let's go back to the Christian example of Christian art here, and the what the hands mean, which hand does what and why, and things like that. So we're going to be citing a wonderful book, an absolutely wonderful book, which I have. I'm looking at the online edition right now on archive.org. And by the way, I'm just going to throw this out there to see if the cat licks this up. It's an important thing for you to know that archive.org is the Internet Archive, also the Wayback Machine. And they're being sued by people who are upset that they have books that are in the public domain that are available to read on the internet for anybody. They also do a library sort of style to borrow and check out certain books in order to promote those books in their printed copies. So you can borrow a book for an hour, but if you want to buy the book, they link you to a source where you can buy them. And it's their way to try and, compromise and, ease that a little bit. But they are being sued in court right now, and it is a for-profit outcome which could happen. And I'm not sure if it has happened yet, but we want to protect archive.org. It is fundamental to the resource of the internet. It is fundamental. It's a veritable library of Alexandria, in addition to which it catalogs, and categorizes and makes notations of websites, snapshots of websites, and things like that throughout time, which are necessary for preservation of our history and our culture. And, when people in the future are going to be looking toward, well, what was culture like, back in the 2010s and the 2020s and things like that, they're going to say, well, let's go to archive.org. We can see for ourselves, and we can, see this in its own context. And I would prefer that history get what I have to say right. I know that I know that to be so. I do declare that to be so. And so I'm sure you might feel the same. So if you can, please donate to the legal fund to defend archive.org. And you can go to archive.org for more information. So that's the resource that I'm using right now. And I'm going to, books are our friends. Books are our friends. Protect the books at all costs. At any and all costs, always protect the books. As Merlin once said, books are always first. Anyway, whether you're packing to stay or packing to leave, whether you're cleaning up or whatever, books are always first, Merlin says, and he was right. And he remains right because he's Merlin. So anyway, I'm going to be citing from archive.org a book by A.B. Cook, or ABC as I like to call him. I love this author. I have read all of his, or at least much of his material. I feel like I know him. I'm so familiar with him. Arthur Bernard Cook, he wrote this book, I believe, in 1914, and it is Zeus, A Study in Ancient Religion. It is the first book of the first volume. And it's a 3-volume set, and each volume is in at least 2 to 3 parts. So there's at least 8,000 pages that he himself wrote on Zeus alone. And to say nothing of his footnotes, which could be a book in and of themselves. So we're now into the, let's see which chapter we are actually looking at here. It's actually one of my favorite chapters. I really do. It's got a lot of great information in it. It also has, it shows, if you read the footnotes as well, it will teach you a lot about symbolism and about why things are depicted as they are. And if that's an area of the world or of history or of the metaphysical, the physical, the super normal, the normal, or the normal, I guess, or the supernatural or the normonatural, if this is all new territory for you, then that would be a wonderful way for a beginner to sort of get a basic understanding as to why things are as uniform as they are and why they mean what they mean. And that this is sort of immutable. And you get a good understanding of that. Now, we are at the chapter, let me see here. I have to go through a lot of pictures. I might edit this little second here. One second. We're looking at the I'm not sure actually the chapter. I'll have to cite this for you, but it's the second part of whatever chapter this is, and this part, or rather this section, is called the Blue Globe. Now the blue, I'm going to read directly here. The blue nimbus is something that just comes before. Then the blue mantle comes before that, and it indicates Zeus as a dweller in the blue sky. Now, more intimate, it says here, ABC writes, that more intimate is the connection denoted by another symbol in the repertoire of the Pompeian artists and the Grecian artists, the Hellenic artists, and the Roman artists, which is the blue orb or the blue globe, which is the modern. It's the OG before the orb of sovereignty came along in Christian arts. It was first here in Greco-Roman art, and for reasons I'm about to get into. Now, it occurs. He gives an example of the painting from the Casa de Diocere, which is it's sort of like you see Zeus seated on a throne, and it's draped in this beautiful shimmering blue, it says here. And I'm looking at a picture of it here, as well as a coin or two from the Roman Empire, as well as from Greece. There's a violet blue mantle that sort of surrounds him, and his eagle is looking up at him, kind of like giving him attention. And there's also, beside him, there's a blue globe on a square base. Now, in all of these instances, of all of these examples, and if I were to be, Zeus in this, it would be on my left. But in his left hand, he's holding a scepter, and the scepter is near touching or touching the blue globe. In his right hand, he's holding thunderbolts. This is important to understand. Now, in America, you sort of got this backward, but you know how your eagle on your dollar has in one talon the olive branch, the other talon the arrows, and why he's looking a certain direction? That means something to you, the Americans. Now, the Americans reverse their symbology, which we'll get to in another episode. Again, I talked about that in the second episode of my other podcast, Royal and the Republic on Crown and Country Radio, I think 2 or 3 years ago. It was episode 2. You can look it up on the website. But in all of these instances, there is a receptive hand. There's also a projective hand. The left is the projective hand. The right is the receptive hand. And if you're a Catholic, especially, all Catholics will understand this. When you get your CCD training and your first Holy Communion, and I know I went through it, I may have parted ways with the Catholic, or rather, that is to say, I may have parted ways with the Roman Catholic, that is to say, Vatican, insofar as my church home, and found it in the Anglican Communion, but officially. But I still had all the CCD classes. You know how you're supposed to receive the communion in your one hand, and then you're supposed to pick it up with your other hand, and they're very particular about that. That's because one is your receptive hand, the other one is your projective hand. And you don't want to receive the communion with your projective hand. You have to pick it up with your right, which is your receptive hand. Your projective hand is the one that's sort of like reaching for it. It projects outward to receive the communion, which it puts in your palm. You bring it back in, and with your receptive hand, you receive the holy body of Christ, the bread of heaven, and then you have communion. Then you participate in communion, right? In all of that symbolism, that's very important. So why is this statue of Christ over here the complete reversal? The complete reversal of this. Now, what this is sort of... One moment, please. I have to edit this bit out. I put it on Do Not Disturb right now. I had a friend messaging me. Now, what this is doing is basically, it's like Christ throwing the world away in favor of what he has in his right hand, which is not clear. It honestly looks like a half-eaten burrito. And that's not something Christ would do. He would not throw away the whole world for a burrito. It's not like Richard III. He's like, oh, my kingdom for a horse. It's not like, oh, my kingdom for this half-eaten burrito. This burrito's so good. And that's not what Christ is saying there. And I'm sorry, I don't think that's a depiction of Christ. Sorry, I just don't. Now, I'm looking at the depictions of Jupiter Zeus here. Now, there's Zeus here. There's also Jupiter is the same deity. You say tomato, Some say tomato. I say tomato. I call him Jupiter primarily. I also call him Zeus on occasion. I like to hyphenate it a little bit, or put like a little enye thing there and say it's not enye, whatever they call it, a tilde. And I say, Jupiter Zeus. But there's another depiction of him with Nike behind him. And in all of these depictions here, there's one from the Casa de Accordi. There's a couple from ancient Roman coins, ancient Grecian coins. There's one here, another depiction where he's seated on the, he's enthroned rather. That is to say seated, I believe. Let me see if he has the other. Yeah, he has the scepter there. He has the lightning ball. He's seated in majesty on the Outer Capitolinus, which is in the Capitoline Hill or Capitol Hill in Rome. And in all of these depictions, the orb is at his side. Now, that's important. Whether or not his hand is raised is important. What position his fingers are in is important. These are all things that are important, but that's a little more complicated than we're going to get into right now. Now, what this essentially distills into is this. We have here these representations, and they imply in only two of them here, or rather they depict in only two of them here, that Jupiter or Zeus has, whatever you want to call him, has in his hand the globe. There's only two in which he's, when he has the globe in his hand. That is when he, as a deity, is handing the globe to the emperor or to the king of Rome, whomever his appointed monarch is. He is saying, I'm delegating some of my, authority to you. This is, I'm Zeus, I'm, king of the gods, god of thunder and lightning, lord of the skies. This is my domain. You are on my domain. This is my world. I am the king here. And you are going to be my earthly lieutenant. Here is some of my authority symbolized by this globe. I'm handing that globe to you. Now, Jupiter, when he has the globe in his hand, and he's not handing it to the emperor, is in one coin here. It's figure 17 on page 46. And, trying to see. Nike's also featured in it, and he is, he says he's holding a scepter in his left hand, and the globe is still in his right, which means it's still his domain, because that's his receptive hand. He's keeping the world, but he won't be handing it to the emperor temporarily. It's a commission. He's handing this to the emperor, this is my world, I need you to take care of, this little part of this for me. This is some of my authority. Not all of it, but some of it. I can take this back whenever I want. It's a life... It's I believe it was for life, for the duration of his incarnate life, the emperor or the king of Rome or of what city-state in Greece he might have, would have his position. Though I know some Grecian cities did experiment in democracy. Lord's help them. God's help them, rather. But in the next one, we see the delegation of that authority, the dominion, to borrow the phrase that David and the Irish Catholic, whatever it was, on Facebook used. These coins are here from Trajan and Hadrian, these two emperors here. Also Diocletian and I think Commodus as well. Now, as in these cases here, it's Jupiter handing that authority, only a bit of it, to the emperor because he's got it in his right hand. So why in this depiction of Christ that is so controversial? Why is the globe in his left? Why is he throwing his dominion, or at least his dominion over the world, away in favor of a half-eaten burrito? That's why these things are important. And in only those delegatory representations do we see the globe in Jupiter's hands at all. Jupiter has the globe on a pillar beside him in some of them. He has the globe on a base beside him. He's usually touching it with his scepter, which means he's intaking into his receptive hand when he's not holding the globe. When he's intaking into his receptive hand lightning, he's taking in that raw power. And via the scepter in his left hand, which is raised over the globe, he's distributing majesty. He's bestowing gifts and stuff. He's being benevolent. He's being wonderful, because that's what Jupiter Zeus does. So, but in no example, at least in this source, which I would call a very credible, very esteemed, very honorable authority, an authoritative authority in this matter, and others, etc., and also etc. In no example does he have it in his left hand. None. Zeus keeps dominion. It's still his. He's only letting the emperor sort of steward or borrow it for a minute. The emperor must give it back whenever Zeus wants, or he gets fried from the sky. And there's an alarming number of instances of that happening, usually when the emperor dicks around with power and authority. You'd be surprised how often the palace in Rome gets struck by lightning, or an emperor gets struck by lightning when he pisses Jupiter off, usually almost right after. There are 47 accounts from the ancient world that I have counted so far. There might even be more that I'm aware of in which that has happened, and are verified in other texts, not just some embellishment of history, but this is actually a thing. Including my favorite example is Elagabalus, who switched Jupiter out as the chief god of the Roman state. He put in the Syrian sun god that he was a priest of back in the day. And this emperor is 18. He's gay. He's twinky. He's doing a bunch of drugs. He's having a bunch of sex. He prostituted himself in the palace to his own guards and stuff. He was a crazy emperor. He had crazy, crazy rituals with this crazy sun god from crazy Syria, where he is from. And nobody in Rome liked it. They're like, you're importing a foreign cult god, and you're being a dick about it, and you're also being weird. And his rituals were bizarre. I wouldn't even get into them. If you think that you're weird, or you think that you've partied hard, you think that you've had a lot of fun gay sex, well, you've got nothing on Elagabalus, who, by the way, was gorgeous. They have his bust. He was gorgeous, twinky little 18-year-old emperor running around Rome, but he was only emperor for about 5 years. When he fell, let's say, the next in the line of succession reinstated Jupiter as the chief god of the Roman state. But in that 5-year period, there were so many lightning strikes against the imperial palace in Rome that because Jupiter's pissed off about his status being diminished in Rome, he's like, the fuck you don't, or the fuck you will, guys, and lightning throwing, fulminator. Jupiter fulminator. But Jupiter tonens. But if anyone is out there who understands what that means, you're cool people, you can come sit with me. But come sit at my table. But in that 5-year period, the lightning strikes increased about 70% from what they would consider to be normal. So common was this, that they actually posted rules for the centurions and for the guards in the imperial palace when they weren't, sucking the emperor's dick or what have you. That's something that happened. That in order to avoid lightning strikes, you should take this route. And in order to avoid being struck by lightning, you should come during these times. And you should avoid, don't go under trees and stuff like that. And they were posted for about 4.5 years, maybe about 4 years. When that became a common occurrence in Rome, they put these posted notices up, and they're also in architectural. When they were doing Elagabalus also remodeled part of the palace. He remodeled, and he built, I believe, a shrine to Elagabalus, the sun god, which the Romans then repurposed after Elagabalus, the emperor, fell, and very appropriately enough for Jupiter Ultor, or Jupiter the Avenger. It became his shrine instead, when he was rightly reinstated as chief god of the Roman state. And so, and when that happened, the lightning strikes went back to normal. Only when the emperors would piss Jupiter off, and it was recorded when they did, that lightning strikes would happen, and auguries would be taken. The seers and the mystics would, determine what that meant, and they would take actions and stuff. But Rome lasted for a very long time, and you could even argue that their influence in Rome, when Jupiter promised to make Rome an everlasting state, like I'm looking at the United States of America and I'm seeing your buildings in Washington D.C. I'm seeing you have a Senate. I'm like, come on, like the influence of Rome has lasted this long, and everyone has tried to imitate Rome since. So in effect, Jupiter has actually kept his promise. So anyway, I digress a little bit. And we are going to, there's also depictions of Christian art in here. And this is the other reason I wanted to bring this authority up. We have what appears to be, and for some reason Christ seems to be stepping on his toe. I'm not sure why. But we have the figure of I'm quoting the book here directly. The god enthroned with a globe as his footstool is a type readily adopted by Christian art. A gilded glass of the 4th century found in one of the Roman catacombs, in figure 22 listed in the book on page 49 and 40 and 50, shows a beardless figure of our Lord, and in parentheses Christus, spelled Christ, V or U-S, seated with his foot on a starry globe. His other foot seems to be on poor St. Stephen's foot, or S. Stephen's foot. He takes a scroll from its case at his side and instructs S. Stephen, or Istephanus, the Godhead with a nimbus in the background, who raises his hands to bless both master and disciple, recalls the victory appearing behind Valentinianus that is to say, Valentinianus the First, and his son. There's also, beside these two here, there's in the center a third figure in this depiction here of a childlike Christ with a halo, or what appears to be a halo. He's reaching out and trying to touch both of their heads. His head is, they're both touching, it seems to be Istephanus here, or Istephanus. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. He's got the left hand of the divine, actually I don't want to say divine, the left hand of the younger figure in the middle of the two of them, what appears to either be floating in the air or is somewhat behind them, is almost or just about or is touching the figure on the viewer's right, which is, I believe, Stephanus. Christ over here is on the left, and his hand, the child's hand, is not touching his head. Christ's, what appears to be his right foot, is on the, I'm not sure which foot it is, of the Istephanus, and his other foot is back. And he's got, it seems to be using the actual globe, which is beneath him, as a footstool. Now, this is important. Over here we have another depiction of Christ seated on the globe. Now, he is an adult in this depiction here. Over here, and that's figure 13. It's a similar type, a father and son, and it looks like Joseph. And they're in a wheat field, and he is sitting upon a globe. It's got like dots on it. Over here, we have another one. This one, he is seated on a globe which has like stars on it. A starry globe he's seated on. And he is with a whole group of people here. Over here, we have other depictions in Christian Rome. He's seated on a globe. In none of them is he holding the globe. Not one of them, actually, that I'm seeing here. Not one of them is he holding a globe. And so I would actually argue, David, that the Christ statue, as you posted on our group, in fact, flies in the face of Christian art completely and its traditions. I would actually call it so inaccurate that I would not call that a depiction of Christ at all. We're going to take a brief musical interlude here, and we are going to come back after it. You are listening to me, Casey, Castanos Rex de Gratiami, and you are listening to me on the Listen Up Podcast Network. Welcome back to the Alchemy Podcast. That is it for today, actually. We will get into why Atlas and why that couldn't possibly be Atlas in another episode, a little bit more Greco-Roman heavy and intensive. But I will say this: one time I was in line at 7-Eleven, and I can't take credit for this joke, even though I can, but I can't. I'd like to credit someone else, even though I came up with it, because it makes it sound like not self-aggrandizing if I say that someone else came up with it, but I came up with it. I also don't want to sound rude, but like I was in line at 7-Eleven one time. This guy was taking forever, like lottery tickets. Like we were all waiting for a bit, and so someone actually went to high five me for saying this. But I said, "Hey, bro, is your name Atlas? What is your name Atlas, bro? No, then why are you holding up the whole fucking world?" Oh, and I got a high five for that one from the person behind me in line. Anyway, that's been our podcast for this week. Join us next week, and we will have more alchemy for you. Until then, I hope that you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Hope. Let's hope that you do. I hope you do. Take care. The Alchemy Podcast is on the Listen Up Podcast Network.